Hi everyone. I'm William Smith, a remote professional services engineer here at Jamf, and today we're going to talk about adapting to change. Before we get started, I would like to say this webinar is going to run pretty long today. However, I have created a Jamf Nation discussion where we can ask questions later, and I'll be there to answer them for whatever you have. You'll find the discussion right now on Jamf Nation. You'll also find a link to it in the resources link at the end of this webinar. This is a map of the United States. I live here in St. Paul, Minnesota. This is my little part of the world. Sometimes it gets a little cold here and we get a little snow. This is looking down my driveway just after I snowblowed it. And fun fact, St. Paul was also the home to Charles Schulz, creator of Peanuts with Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and the rest of the gang. Our Jamf headquarters is just down the road from me in Minneapolis. 7 years ago, while before I joined Jamf, I was responsible for installing a new piece of software for one of my customers here in St. Paul. Similar to a jumpstart from Jamf, we paid for a consultant with the software developer to help us configure our server. While he was helping us, we used an online video and a remote control service similar to GoToMeeting or WebEx or Zoom. While we were talking, I noticed the consultant had a slight Minnesota accent, and I asked if he lived here in Minnesota. I learned he used to live in Minnesota, but now he lived in the Philippines. That's where his wife was from, and they moved there a few years ago. So I asked, if you live in the Philippines, where are you now? And he said, I'm sitting in my home in the Philippines. Now, I've never been to the Philippines, but I think it probably looks something like this. And I could be wrong, but I bet people in the Philippines don't have to shovel snow. That's a big advantage of being able to work from anywhere in the world that you want. That remote session with the consultant was the first time it became really clear to me that there are jobs that I could do literally from anywhere in the world. I remember when I was in my early 20s telling my dad that I'd just gotten a new job and him asking me, are you going to move? I asked, why would I move? It's just across town. My dad grew up in a time when a good paying job often meant working there most of your life and retiring. And then it made sense to live close to work. But work patterns, at least here in the United States, have changed dramatically over the past several decades. Traditionally, our mindset has been around the office. The office was the central location of resources like telephones and fax machines, equipment like our desks and computers, conference rooms, files and data, including servers, coworkers, and other departments, and even our homes revolved around the office. Today, our landlines are replaced by mobile phones. We can take a call anywhere in the world. We use email to send and receive messages and documents. No longer do we go to a machine to fetch our documents. They come to us anywhere we have an email connected device. Our desks can be anything from a couch in a coffee shop to a kitchen table to a chair on an outside patio. Online meeting tools still let us meet face to face using cameras and microphones and speakers built into our devices. All of our data is stored on servers, and many of those servers are in the cloud. And we communicate with our coworkers extensively over chat without the need to interrupt what we're doing and leave our desks. All of these advances in technology have allowed us to change our work patterns so that our jobs no longer depend on us having to revolve around the office. Now we can keep what's most important at the center of our lives and bring the world to us. To implement support for your end users requires we provide them the right tools, access, and trust. We have to equip them with devices that serve multiple purposes. A laptop and a smartphone are a good start. Then we need to provide the right software and settings. We need to give them access to data and services to do our jobs. That could mean opening your network to allow them to come in from home, or it could mean securely storing your data with the service on the internet. And we have to ensure the right people and the right machines can access the right resources. That doesn't mean we have to lower our security standards, but it may mean we have to think or rethink our security standards to meet them in a new way. Are you ready to support remote workers? Once a MacBook, an iPhone, or an iPad leaves your office network, it could be just a few miles away or in a completely different country. Do you have the right infrastructure in place to be able to manage that device and support your end users from anywhere in the world? We'll look at evaluating your infrastructure to do so. How do you ensure the data on those devices stays safe if they get lost or stolen? How do you ensure the right person is even using the device? We'll discuss what tools can do that for you. How do we help employees collaborate with each other? Management and security go a long way toward protecting our organization's confidential information, but our end users still need to be able to work together as if they're together in the same office. Finally, many of us are here today because we may have never considered or planned for the events happening right now around the world. The ability for anyone to self sequester and work from home due to the COVID-19 virus will keep many businesses operating. We have a very important role as IT professionals in making that happen. How do we now support business as unusual? At the end of the webinar, I'll provide a link to some resources around what we're covering today. Before we begin, for those of you new to Jamf, here's a quick summary of what we do. Jamfs help organizations succeed with Apple. Jamf offers a portfolio of enterprise-grade solutions ready to help you tackle authentication, device management, and endpoint protection challenges in the Apple ecosystem. And underpinning it all is Jamf Nation, the world's largest community of Apple administrators with more than 100,000 of your fellow admins on the site ready to help you connect and learn and grow. Jamf helps more than 36,000 organizations manage 16 million plus Apple devices and counting. When the enterprise needs the world leader in Apple management, they turn to Jamf. The world's largest banks, tech companies, most valuable brands, and largest companies choose Jamf for Apple management. Also, before we get started, we understand that many of you are currently facing challenging situations, and we want to make our products and services more accessible in your time of need. Please reach out to us to get started. We're allowing unlimited personal devices at no additional cost, waiving onboarding services requirements, offering free services to help you implement work at home, school at home, and care at home programs, providing free remote training courses to implement at home programs, offering free use of Jamf School, and waiving licensing costs for telemedicine and patient families. All of this is for existing and new customers too. All right, let's review some of the basics about how your devices communicate with Jamf Pro. You may have nothing to do, or you may be in a situation where you need to work to reconnect your devices that have left your network. What are some examples of a Jamf Pro environment? The most common is a cloud environment or SaaS model, where everything is hosted outside the company network. The rest will be some form of on-premises solution like a single server that may be behind a firewall, or multiple servers in a cluster using a DMZ, or a split environment where the Jamf Pro management server is on premises with a cloud-hosted distribution point, or an internal only server that's only accessible with VPN. Here's the first scenario. On the left is the end user's home, and with that end user are an iPhone and a MacBook Pro. On the right is Jamf Cloud, our hosted Jamf Pro service. If you're already using Jamf Cloud, there's nothing more to do. Your devices can reach your Jamf Pro management server, and you have the ability to deploy packages, settings, and ebooks anywhere in the world. The same applies to customers who've chosen to install their own instance of Jamf Pro in a cloud service like Amazon or Rackspace. Now, what if you host your own Jamf Pro server on premises? Usually, there's a firewall protecting your internal network from internet intruders. You're going to have to poke a hole in your firewall to allow your devices to reach Jamf Pro. Your devices initiate the connection to your Jamf Pro server, and it'll respond over the same port. But what about installer packages for your Macs or your eBooks? These don't come from your Jamf Pro server. Instead, they come from a file share distribution point. That means there's another hole you need to poke in your firewall. And because you're sharing this to the internet, you should be able to uh, enable ports 80 and 443. It'll respond over the same ports. Network security teams may not approve of you simply wanting to poke holes in the firewall, though. In fact, what they should do is install a second firewall and something called a DMZ. This is a neutral zone between your internal network and the internet. DMZs allow you to expose specific servers to internet traffic instead of your entire internal network. Your two DMZ servers will communicate with servers on your internal network over ports only open on your internal firewall. So here, the internal distribution point in the upper right replicates its packages and ebooks to the distribution point in the DMZ, and the Jamf Pro server in the DMZ communicates to your Jamf Pro server on your internal network that hosts your MySQL database. Devices at home communicate only with your DMZ servers. And by the way, many of these ports I'm using are simply the defaults. You can change those, most of those, depending on your security requirements. Here's an alternative setup where we replace the DMZ distribution point with a cloud distribution point like Amazon Web Services. Jamf Pro also supports Rackspace Cloud Files and Akamai. Why would we want to do this? Two reasons. One, to reduce internet traffic back to your company. Remember, packages can be very large, and pushing large packages to all of your Macs may overwhelm your distribution point or your company's internet bandwidth. And two, cloud services can distribute your files across their network, allowing devices to receive packages and ebooks from a server that's closest to them. So, what does this look like? First, your internal distribution point replicates your packages to your cloud service. Your devices will still check in with your DMZ Jamf Pro server, but then they install their packages and ebooks from your cloud distribution point. Finally, if you don't use cloud services and you can't put a Jamf Pro server and distribution point in your DMZ, you can still allow internet traffic using VPN. VPN requires a server or appliance that's available to the internet and VPN software on your devices that points to your VPN server. The client connects to the VPN server and creates an encrypted tunnel to your network, and that tunnel stays open as long as the VPN software is turned on. From there, all your Jamf Pro traffic travels through the tunnel to directly access your internal servers. Now, VPN might sound like an ideal solution compared to putting servers in the DMZ or using the Jamf Cloud service, but keep in mind, most of the time the end user has control over whether VPN is turned on or off. If they turn off VPN, then your management of their devices is also turned off. VPN is really the least desirable solution, but if you need immediate access to manage your devices and you have no externally facing Jamf Pro servers, it may be the quickest and easiest solution for you to implement. Let's compare what we just discussed. All of these infrastructure solutions are secure or can be made secure. Traffic between your devices and your management server is encrypted using TLS 1.2 encryption, and for your distribution points that you maintain, you'll need to provide an SSL certificate to encrypt that traffic. Jamf supports every one of these infrastructure solutions. However, Jamf can't support your third-party cloud services, server hardware, server operating systems, firewalls, and VPN solutions. You'll still be responsible for supporting the non-Jamf pieces. Most of these solutions support high availability. Jamf Cloud's infrastructure is designed to be 99.9% available 24 hours, 7 days a week. If you're looking for quick implementation to support home workers in the near term, Jamf Cloud or a single on-premises Jamf Pro server behind a firewall or VPN will get you started managing devices in less than a day. Anything more than that depends on your infrastructure security needs. With any infrastructure solution, Jamf can have you up and going in just a day or two once you've designed your infrastructure topology. But keep in mind that it can take decision makers and network architects, server administrators, network administrators who understand your environment a considerable amount of time just to do that. I've put Jamf Cloud as the easiest to maintain because it includes 30 days of secure backups and automatic updates when they're released. On top of that, there is no infrastructure for customers to maintain. It includes high availability servers and a dedicated team to manage them. It includes the SSL certificate and a cloud distribution point for your installer packages and ebooks. And for those reasons, I also put Jamf Cloud as the most cost-effective infrastructure solution. Why? Other than my own bias, we charge the same subscription price for Jamf Cloud hosting services as on premises. The only thing that Jamf Cloud doesn't offer is direct access to your database. If your security requires complete and end-to-end control over your data, then one of the self-hosted solutions is going to meet your needs. Once our management infrastructure is ready, we have to consider making our devices secure when they're not on the network, protected by our firewalls, proxies, and other security tools. So what exactly does making them secure mean? We need to ensure the right people are using the devices. We'll look at some options for authentication. We also need to protect the data on the devices from accidental or intentional exposure or loss. Basic protections are already built into the macOS operating system itself, but unless we keep our applications up to date, we're losing a lot of security benefits. And what happens if a device gets lost or stolen? Do you have a plan to help your end users who are probably very reluctant to report this to you? There's a lot we can do here. In many parts of the world is an expression that possession is 9/10 of the law, which means ownership of something is easier to maintain if someone has possession of it. So let's start with ownership. And let's start with an Apple Business Manager account or an Apple School Manager account if you're a K-12 or higher ed school. An Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager account is about maintaining something called a chain of custody. This is a term describing the documented transfer of responsibility of something from one party to another. In police work, for example, chain of custody is used to ensure evidence collected at a crime scene is transferred only between authoritative figures to ensure it's intact and untampered with when it comes to trial. Only Apple makes Apple devices, and everyone has a unique serial number. When Apple transfers new devices to a reseller for distribution, it keeps record of the serial number sold to that reseller. And then in turn, when the reseller sells you the devices, it too keeps record of the serial number sold to you and adds them to your Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager account. Then Apple allows you to associate an MDM like Jamf Pro to it. Once your Jamf Pro server is associated to the account, Apple will recognize your server as legally authoritative for those devices. This is the role that Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager plays in your device management. If you haven't signed up for one of these free accounts, you should do so right away. From here, you control chain of custody with automated device enrollment. For you Windows admins out there, this is equivalent to Windows Autopilot, which is Microsoft's automated enrollment service. With your devices associated to Jamf Pro, Apple will let you control the setup assistant experience for your end users. But what if that person holding the device isn't one of your employees or students? One step you can take is to require authentication from your end user to authorize the setup of the device. Without this authorization, the device is effectively useless to anyone else, and it won't be able to access your network or company resources. You'll do this within Jamf Pro Prestaged Enrollments for either macOS or iOS. Here's what the options for iOS look like. Under the General tab of your Prestage, you can enable Require Credentials for Enrollment, and you can provide a custom message with instructions for your end users to enter their Active Directory credentials. Or you can take advantage of a recently added feature in Jamf Pro called enrollment customization that allows end users to provide single sign-on credentials with a cloud identity provider like Azure, Google, or Okta. When your end users proceed through the setup assistant on their devices, they'll see something similar to these iPads. The iPad on the left is requesting Active Directory credentials, and the iPad on the right is requesting single sign-on credentials from Okta. Both of these authorization methods work anywhere in the world. The devices don't need to be on your company network. Once a user has authenticated, the device is now authorized to begin configuration. At this point, Jamf Pro will install software, configure email accounts, and anything else you've instructed when enrollment is complete. And now it's ready to use. Now, let's spend some time discussing how to protect devices after they're configured. By default, macOS disallows not creating a password out of the box, but anyone with admin privileges can change that. So you need to enforce passwords to be used and enforce password requirements. You can do this in a couple of ways. If your Mac is using an external authentication service like Active Directory or single sign-on identity providers, then set your password policy there. There's no need to use Jamf to do this. But if you do need to use Jamf Pro to enforce your password policy, then you can certainly do so. In Jamf Pro, make a new configuration profile and add the passcode payload from the list of payloads in the middle. From here, you have several options for your password policy. These are the settings I recommend. Obviously, we want to require a passcode or a password on your Macs. Without this, the rest of the settings are disabled. I suggest the minimum passcode length be the highest number possible, which is 16 characters. Now, you might be saying, but Bill, my users will revolt if I set it that high. My answer to you is to require longer, easy to remember passwords in lieu of any sort of password complexity. If you look closely at this shot, I'm not requiring any uppercase, lowercase, numbers, or symbols. Research has found it's not the complexity of a password that makes it secure, it's the length. Here are two passwords. The one on top has a complexity requirement of uppercase and lowercase letters, a symbol, and a number. It's 8 characters long. We've even tried to be tricky and substitute a 0 for the letter O in Thomas. The one on the bottom has 16 characters. It's all lowercase, and as a touch typist, I can enter it just as quickly as the password above. Furthermore, it's a phrase, which is easy to remember. I don't have to leave this on a sticky note under my keyboard. But here's why a longer but easier to remember password is better than a shorter, complex password. It would take a computer running a password cracker about 9 hours to crack the first one, but 51 million years to crack the second one. A password does us no good if we don't lock our devices, so I recommend auto-locking Macs after about 15 minutes. With remote workers, you may want to reduce that to 5 or 10 minutes. I like to add a grace period of 1 minute when I'm setting the auto-lock time to something low. This gives the end user a minute to wiggle the mouse or press a key when he or she sees the screen lock. This one setting can save them a lot of frustration. Finally, for highly secure organizations, I recommend setting the device to erase after a maximum number of failed password attempts. 11 is the highest number and should be good enough to allow several tries before the end user has to call the help desk. Here's another way to protect accounts. By default, anyone, including a standard user or a complete stranger, can take a Mac and hold down a couple of keys while restarting it and reset your admin password. That means he or she can gain full control of the computer and possibly more access to your company resources. You have two ways to prevent this. First, you can enable a firmware password automatically and silently on all of your Macs. Enabling a firmware password doesn't interfere with startup, and your end users will see nothing different. However, if someone attempts to boot the Mac to the Mac OS recovery partition to reset your admin password, he or she will see this screen and must provide the firmware password to continue. Jamf Pro already has a built-in policy payload for doing this. All you need to do is create a new policy and add the EFI password payload. Then you can set the password to anything you want and scope it to all of your Macs. Now, the downside to this, though, is that all of your Macs will receive the same firmware passcode. And at the same point, you may need to provide this to one of your end users as a means of troubleshooting or maybe rebuilding their Mac remotely. Once you give out this password, you can't control who has it. If you need better security, then I suggest using a script that randomly generates a firmware password and places it in Jamf Pro as an extension attribute. I have a script and an extension attribute here. You don't need to customize them with any information of your own. Just add them to Jamf Pro, create a smart group from the extension attribute, and scope that to a policy that runs the script. This link will be in the resources at the end of the webinar, so don't worry about writing it down. The script generates a random 8-character hexadecimal string and adds it to the computer record. I've placed it here as part of my hardware list. However, a better way to protect your admin account from someone booting to macOS recovery is to simply enable FileVault. When FileVault is enabled, whoever is attempting to reset your password must either provide the admin password or provide the recovery key. Without either of those, your admin account is safe from being reset. And not only does FileVault protect your admin account, it protects all the data on your Mac. If your remote workers deal with sensitive information like company secrets, customer data like credit cards, hospital patient record information, or student information, then you need to encrypt that data as even at rest on their computers. I want to point out to you that before you turn on FileVault, you want to make sure you're capturing the recovery key. This is a long string of characters that enable someone in IT to unlock the Mac if the end user forgets his or her password or leaves your organization without telling you a password. To do so requires you deploy a configuration profile before you enable FileVault or at the same time. For macOS High Sierra 10.13 and higher, you'll do that in the Security and Privacy payload under the FileVault tab. This is the same place where you can also enable FileVault if you want to use a configuration profile. For macOS Sierra 10.12 and lower, you'll deploy the FileVault recovery key payload set to automatically redirect the recovery key to your Jamf Pro server here. Once you've enabled the escrowing of the key, you're ready to enable FileVault, and you can do this a few different ways. Each method has its own benefits. If you're using Jamf Connect with a cloud identity provider like Okta or Azure, or Nomad with Active Directory, you can turn on FileVault automatically the moment a new user logs into the Mac, and it will be completely transparent. I'll talk more about this in a little bit. Also, once FileVault is turned on, it may take several minutes or a few hours to encrypt the disk. It's perfectly okay if the end user restarts the computer or sleeps the computer by closing the lid of the laptop. Encryption will continue from where it left off the next time the Mac is active. Just as important as enabling escrowing the key is updating inventory or running a recon command to send the key to your Jamf Pro server. You won't see the key until you do this. After updating inventory, you'll find the recovery key in the computer inventory section under disk encryption. Should you enable Firewall on your Macs? If they leave your network and won't be protected by your network firewall, then yes. You'll do this for all of your computers using a configuration profile with the same security and privacy payload that you use to configure escrowing the FileVault key. All you need to do is turn it on, and then choose the option to control incoming connections for specific apps. Remember, a firewall's purpose is to prevent unwanted incoming connections. It doesn't stop installed and signed software like Microsoft Auto Update or Zoom from reaching out to servers and downloading files or making connections. Even AirDrop works just fine. Finally, I suggest you also enable stealth mode. This is especially handy for home workers who may choose to visit a local coffee shop to work or and use their public network. Stealth mode prevents someone else on the same network from scanning the computer's open ports and looking for vulnerabilities. The Mac simply won't respond. The last piece of protecting data is safeguarding it against accidental deletions, hardware malfunctions, or malware. We need to keep in mind that end users won't be able to work off the servers, which are getting backed up while at home. Even over a VPN connection with high-speed internet, this can be a painful experience. All solutions are going to be at least one of two choices. We either set up our end users to back up to a cloud service, or we provide them guidance for configuring a local backup storage solution. A cloud solution is ideal because it transfers data offsite to a server infrastructure that's getting managed. If you have nothing in place to support a cloud or local backup solution, you at least have iCloud, and every Apple ID comes with 5 gigs of storage. Now that's not a lot, but it's better than nothing, and it's already integrated with macOS and iOS. For a small cost per account, you can always buy more storage, up to 2 terabytes for $10 a month. All you need to do is have your end users turn it on. Now, this is not something that you can manage. Cloud sharing services like Dropbox and Microsoft OneDrive make good pseudo backup solutions because you may already be using them. Most offer business pricing, central management, cross platform support, multi device support, and versioning as well. You can retrieve versions up to 180 days with Dropbox or 30 days with OneDrive. If you need to implement a solution quickly, look at a cloud file sharing solution. Some solutions are designed specifically for backups. Backblaze, Carbonite, and CrashPlan are three of the most popular with cross-platform support, but only Backblaze offers a mobile client. Carbonite and CrashPlan discontinued their mobile clients. Finally, for a local backup solution, Time Machine is solid and time tested. It's the fastest solution you can implement because it's backing up over USB or Thunderbolt instead of an internet connection. And it's easy to set up. Just plug in an external drive, and if it's empty, Time Machine will offer to use it. Most end users can do this themselves. All you need to do is provide them an inexpensive external hard drive. You can put together a short list of drives you'd recommend and then either let your end users order online or you can buy in bulk and just ship it to their homes. All right, now let's turn now to the software running on your devices. Above all else, the best protection you can give them is to simply keep them up to date. The best thing you can do for your Macs is enable every option here in the software update pane in System Preferences, but the first three are the most important. Enabling check for updates turns on your Mac's built-in update system. Without it, your remote user would need to manually check for the new updates for themselves, and that's unlikely to happen with many of them. They simply don't understand the importance of updates, or they have other things distracting them. While your remote worker is using the Mac, it can silently download new updates in the background and get them ready. This saves them time because they don't have to wait for updates. Updates come to them. This option, though, to install macOS updates is the critical piece. My philosophy about when to install updates is they should include what works for the end users. We shouldn't be enforcing software updates while they're working, but we shouldn't allow them to have full control over whether they install the updates. This is a nice compromise because it notifies them updates are available and will be installed during the night. All your end users have to do is keep their Macs powered on and plugged in. iOS updates are a different matter though. By default, Apple prompts the end user that an update is available. We as Jamf Pro admins don't have much control over that, other than delaying the updates for about 90 days. After that, Apple will be persistent in notifying your iOS users that updates are ready to install. If you do notice many of your devices are behind on updates or just unequal, you can use the action button to send a command to one or more of the devices. When you click the action button, you'll then choose the Send Remote Commands radio button and you'll click Next. Note that you can only send this command to supervised devices. That means your BYOD devices that your end users have enrolled in Jamf Pro aren't eligible. One nice feature of this command is you can choose which update to install. If you're not ready to deploy the latest version, you don't have to. And when an update is ready, your end users will receive a prompt, a subtle prompt, as a badge notification on the Settings app. After a while, Apple will display a notification on the screen suggesting to install now or schedule to install later. This isn't a manageable setting, but your end users can enable automatic updates themselves in settings. You might want to point them to that. As a consequence of devices leaving your network, there's a much greater risk of them getting lost or stolen. Make a plan now for how to react when something like that happens. Apple has built in management capabilities to help you find missing iPads and iPhones, but not yet to find missing Macs. Keep that in mind. You should consider whether you want to allow your end users to be able to use the Find My app that comes with most Apple devices today. We'll touch on a few points with that. And don't forget, you have the ability to send remote commands to devices to lock them or erase them. When an end user reports his or her or iPad is lost, you can enable lost mode under the management section of the device record itself. If the device is truly lost, maybe it was left behind at a coffee shop or in a taxi cab, then offering a small reward for its return is fair. Note, the wording says, if found and returned. That puts a condition on the reward that you must gain physical possession of the device. By Be ready to send a small packing box with a return label using an expedited shipping system like UPS or FedEx. When the device goes into lost mode, it displays the message from Jamf Pro. And Jamf Pro reports on the lost mode status in the device's inventory under security. Note the last item, which displays GPS coordinates of its approximate location. These coordinates only appear when the device is in lost mode. Clicking these coordinates will open Apple Maps to show you a location on a map, and you can paste them into another service like Google Maps if you don't want to use Apple Maps. Yep, there it is, in St. Paul. Consider whether you should allow your end users to sign in to their Apple ID accounts and use Apple's Find My app and location services. Allowing this empowers your users to help themselves before having to reach out to your desk and report their devices are lost or stolen. Most of the time, they're probably going to be between two couch cushions. Even if your organization has a policy against using iCloud, you can use a configuration profile with the restrictions payload to granularly disallow most iCloud services while still allowing those that could benefit you. If you take advantage of managed Apple IDs for business, you can control the Apple ID signing into iCloud. And as a matter of last resort, you have two more options. Both Mac and iOS devices support lock commands. The command for Macs actually restarts the computer and enables a firmware passcode that you provide as part of the command. Use the lock computer command when you expect the Mac is simply lost and may be returned to you. Again, consider offering a small reward as an incentive to return the device. To keep track of the lock codes, create a computer extension attribute with a text field to store the code until the Mac is returned. When you're ready to unlock the Mac, look up the code in the computer's inventory record. But if you feel that recovering a Mac isn't going to be possible, you can take the most dramatic approach and send a wipe command to the computer, which not only erases the user data, it also erases the operating system itself. For iOS devices, the wipe device command will only erase user data. If someone goes through the effort of restoring an operating system, so long as you're using automated device enrollment, no one except an authorized user will be able to proceed through the setup assistant and use the device. This isn't a comprehensive list of everything you can do to protect devices off network, but it's certainly the fundamentals if you find yourself suddenly supporting remote workers. Jamf Pro offers you end-to-end management and security anywhere in the world. With the immediate need to ensure our devices and data are secure from end to end, now we can start looking for ways to help our remote workers work with each other. Which is better, putting together our own set of solutions or choosing to support an ecosystem? We'll cover some thoughts about how a piecemeal set of tools can offer a crafted experience, whereas a bundled set of tools are just made to work together. What's different about supporting collaboration tools from other applications? We'll look at a few things to consider. We live in a world of modern tools that replaced a lot of old technology that kept us tethered to the office. Our new model, where our tools revolve around us instead of us revolving around the office, means they are now the links that connect us with our coworkers. It's not just the phone, but email, chat, cloud-based files, and video conferencing. Several solutions providers make at least one of these tools, and many make multiple tools, often blurring the lines between them and always making their own tools work better together rather than mixed with other solutions. There's an ecosystem for everything and an app for everything. So here are some thoughts about what I see when I'm visiting with customers. If we review some of the major collaboration tools, we'll see names that we all know very well. The three major players, Apple, Google, and Microsoft, have developed suites of products and created ecosystems where their tools work great when used together. For example, Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, and Word have autosave and document collaboration features, but they only work if you store your files on Microsoft OneDrive. Or take Apple's feature for making custom animated emojis. They're cute and they're fun, but only work effectively if the people you're chatting with also have iPhones and iPads. And while it's fair to say these three companies have targeted the three major markets of business, consumer, and education, each has a dominance in one over the others. Apple has focused heavily on consumer and offers little in terms of cross-platform support. Google has focused heavily on education and works across platforms and devices, and Microsoft has focused heavily on business with emphasis on Microsoft and Apple platforms and devices. Looking at each of their product lines, you'll see there's no discernible differences in the types of services they offer. It's their client applications where they differ most. Apple has chosen to develop separate clients for chat, email, and group video, whereas Microsoft combines its chat, audio, and conferencing into their one Teams app. Google has invested its work into mostly online services where you need to use a browser on your Mac. Other than its Google Drive app for cloud files, it has few thick clients that you can even install, which means it can't take much advantage of features like Spotlight for searching that come with the Mac OS. Altogether, if your needs aren't heavily dependent on one type of service, but you need multiple services, then one of these is probably a good fit for you. If you're on a tight budget, Apple's ecosystem is probably makes the most sense for you, but you're not going to get a lot of bells and whistles that are useful to a business. If you need a more business-focused ecosystem with cross-platform support, then Google or Microsoft are the better options. If you have a heavy dependency on very specific services like file sharing, chat, or teleconferencing, then a dedicated solution may be the better choice for you. These usually excel in one or two key areas while offering basic or no support in others. This is why you see most are heavily targeting businesses with little focus on consumer and education customers. Box and Dropbox are both great file sharing and transfer platforms, and their power is their ability to share files both within the organization and outside. Traditionally, Network administrators have managed servers with file shares, and they were the only ones who controlled access to those file shares. For new employees, that meant waiting for their paperwork to get processed and their end user accounts to get added to the correct groups. And there could often be hundreds or thousands of groups in large organizations. Services like Box and Dropbox put the power of sharing in the end user's hands while allowing administrators some control over what can be shared and with whom. And while Slack is the most popular chat platform available for business and has teleconferencing features, its focus isn't teleconferencing. The power of each of these three services is the integrations with other tools. So, for example, Slack offers integrations to bring notifications from dozens of other services into one window for everything. And WebEx and Zoom offer integrations with your calendar to plan and schedule meetings as well as to manage conference rooms. So overall, if your organization doesn't have a deep need for one of these specific services, then one of the three ecosystems will probably suit you just fine. However, if you find an ecosystem isn't satisfying some of your service needs, then you'll want to look at something to supplement it with another service that's focused in that area. Okay, let's go over some different things you'll do to support these collaboration tools. For the most part, they're apps, just like any other. I'm going to use Zoom web conferencing tool as an example of what you can do. First, I need to deploy Zoom to my users now. Here's what my current infrastructure looks like, though. I don't yet have a distribution point exposed to the internet. My network services and server groups have said that this is going to take at least 2 weeks. I don't have 2 weeks, and I don't have a cloud service like Amazon to use as a distribution point. What can I do? This is where a script can come in handy. Instead of downloading the Zoom installer, putting it into a distribution point, and then telling your Macs to download from there, we can instead give them instructions to go straight to the source and download the installer directly from Zoom. Here's where you can find that script for downloading and installing Zoom on your Macs. Again, I'll include this in the resources at the end of the webinar. The basic workflow is to put the script into a policy and target the policy to the Macs you want to have Zoom and just exclude those Macs that already have it. For a little extra security, I've even added a checksum option that you can supply with the script. That way, you guarantee the software package your Macs are downloading is identical to the one you downloaded and tested. Now that we have Zoom installed, how do we configure it? We could provide our end users with documentation, but they may not pay attention to the details or they could simply mistype something. This is where I like to show off a new feature introduced in Jamf Pro 10.19 that I like to call Bring Your Own Manifest. A manifest is another name for a list. A Jamf manifest contains a list of configurable settings for an application. I've built a manifest for Zoom, and you'll find a link here. So how does this work? First, you'll go to that link and get the manifest. Just copy the contents of this file to your clipboard. Then in Jamf Pro, create a new configuration profile and add the application and custom settings payload. Here, you'll choose custom schema as your source and enter us.zoom.config as your domain. After that, you'll scroll down to the custom schema field and paste the manifest from your clipboard. When you've done that, click the Properties tab just above. Now, you'll see a list of about 50 manageable settings for Zoom. All you need to do is locate the preferences you want to set, change Not Configured to Configured, set your options, and scope the profile to your Macs. This is a very new feature, so you won't necessarily find manifests for every application that you need to manage, but I'll have a link at the end of the webinar where the community is posting more and more manifests every day. Finally, the first time Zoom launches, your end users may see some unexpected dialogues. When an application requests access to another application or process on the Mac, or to a location like files or on the computer, or the user's downloads folder, You can manage this using a Privacy Preferences Policy Control Setting, PPPC. However, there are three types of requests an app may make that are unmanageable. These are requests for the microphone and the camera, as we see here, and for screen capture like QuickTime recording on your desktop. What can we do about these messages? For non-manageable requests, you'll need to educate your end users about what they mean and how to respond. These alerts should only appear the first time they launch the app. When they click the OK or Don't Allow button, their choice is listed under the Privacy tab in Security and Privacy in System Preferences. Note the icon in the lower left corner shows the pane is locked. That generally means that changing the settings requires an administrator. However, certain items in this list on the left belong to the users and are completely under their control. So if a user accidentally clicks Don't Allow when prompted to use Zoom to access the camera, he or she can come into this pane and enable the camera just by checking the box next to Zoom. That's all it takes. For manageable requests like access to a user's downloads folder, you can use Jamf's PPPC utility app. It's easy to use. Just drag the Zoom app into the applications field on the left, locate the downloads folder item in the middle, and choose Allow. Then click the Upload button to upload directly to your Jamf Pro server as a new configuration profile. You'll need to locate and scope the profile to your Macs. I'll post a link to download this app at the end of the webinar. Those are the high points for facilitating collaboration between your end users. I'm sure they'll have opinions about what they want to use, and you should listen to them. It's not our place to choose the tools to do their jobs, but we should offer guidance about what makes sense. And then we can manage those tools using Jamf Pro. Now, with our infrastructure in place, our devices hardened against the world, and collaboration tools installed, we can finally wrap our heads around business continuity plans. With the world self-sequestering and social distancing due to COVID-19, those of us who can work from home have the daunting task of moving forward without assurance of what's coming next. Much of our support isn't going to change. We'll still have password resets and hardware failures. What can we do to improve our responses for these common support issues? Being proactive rather than reactive requires that we know how to collect information about unknown environments like home networks, and that we have tools in place to watch for unusual activity. What can we implement to help us there? And finally, a little psychology applied to technology goes a long way toward reducing friction and pain. How do we show our human side when we're not face to face? Most of the popular features of Jamf Pro, one of the most popular features of Jamf Pro is SelfService, an app you can brand to look like your own and give your end users a very familiar feel. I'm going to plug a self-service tool I helped a customer write for her environment to gather common pieces of information about a Mac. If you've ever had to try to talk to an end user through how to find an IP address or verify whether they're communicating with Active Directory, you'll appreciate what this script can do for you when helping remote users. Simply tell them to open self-service, locate the policy, and click Run. In a few seconds, they'll see a dialog like this with a lot of information. It's also very extensible. You can customize the button to open TeamViewer for remote support, or even email this information to the service desk. And again, I'll have more information about this at the end of the webinar. Here's something else you can put into self-service. Links to your employee documents, your HR handbook, your employee payroll and health benefits portal, business card order forms, help desk ticketing systems, business forms, departmental address books, anything your employees would find useful. And be sure to put these documents in a cloud file sharing system, not on your internal network. Make using self-service easy and worth using. Password changes account for anywhere between 30 and 50% of support desk calls, and end users who are off network can't change their passwords themselves. Jamf Connect addresses this problem by replacing the macOS login window with its own. And instead of authenticating against Active Directory, they can authenticate against Okta or Azure or Google from anywhere in the world. Even if this is a brand new Mac, out of the box, for a new employee, Jamf Connect lets him or her use the password you have assigned. And once signed in, Jamf Connect can help the end users change their passwords, which can then sync back to Active Directory. Or if a support technician resets the account in Active Directory, it can sync back to the identity provider and the end user can log into his or her Mac with the new password. This eliminates the need for VPN. Managed passwords don't have to go unmanaged just because the end user is at home. Let's look at ways we can be proactive with our support. Macs are not impervious to malware, especially malware that uses social engineering to encourage the end user to enter his or her password. Even a standard Mac OS account can get infected, and everything that the user can access, so can that malware. Jamf's newest security product is Jamf Protect, and it's written specifically for Mac OS. It has support for Apple's endpoint security framework and uses real-time alerts to analyze and proactively detect problems with the Macs and fix them. All of this information gets reported to a dashboard like this one that you can monitor. While Jamf Protect is a great solution for remediating external attacks, quite often what we're facing on the support desk is something much less sinister, but just as problematic. I'm speaking of the end user's home network, or rather their internet service provider. Here's a link to an extension attribute that one of my customers inspired me to write. Sometimes it's just handy to know some details about the home and internet service provider. This information gets collected and stored in the computer record as Macs update their inventory. You'll notice it collects not only the name, but the locale of the ISP, which you can use to look up outages. The information we're collecting isn't detailed enough to pinpoint our user's home, so there should be no privacy concerns. To use this extension attribute, just add it to Jamf Pro and wait for devices to update their inventory. Or you can also run sudo jamf recon in terminal right now on a specific device if you need the information right away. Then go find it in the computer record. We're at the end of our webinar, but I'd like to take a minute and talk about this phrase. Remember, the human is the first rule of netiquette coined by Virginia Shea back in 1994 about online behavior, and it's more or less a rewording of the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Working remotely is going to affect people in different ways, and some won't react as well as others. Your support staff is going to get a lot of calls from frustrated people, and you're going to be in meetings without face-to-face interaction. You don't have the opportunity to use social or facial expressions or gestures on the phone. You only have the sound of your voice. So I challenge you to be the first to use your remote support or teleconferencing tools and be a friendly face to your coworkers. Turn on your camera, even if they don't turn on theirs. Show them you're interested. Show them you're engaged. Show them the human side of yourself. You'll find it really does make a difference. World events may upset our daily routines and what's familiar, but so long as we have people to support, it's business as usual, or even business as unusual. This part of our jobs doesn't change, but we may have to broaden our focus to keep pace with things that are changing around us. That's my presentation for you today. I hope you found it useful. Our goal was to cover how you can give your remote workers the right tools, access, and trust with Jamf Pro. One more time, we understand that many of you are currently facing challenging situations, and we want to make sure that our products and services are more accessible in your time of need. Please reach out to us if you need any help. We are offering a lot of services and licensing for free. Reach out to us to take advantage of what you can use for your organization. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Before we conclude, I'd like to say that Jamf also offers more to help you be successful. Our professional services offer on-location remote services to customize Jamf Pro for your environment. That's what I do every day here at Jamf. We also offer certification courses led by our training team. Become an expert in Jamf Pro and widen your skill set. Finally, we have world-class support from Apple experts across the globe. We even offer 24/7 report with our premium support packages. All of the code snippets that I've been using and the links to resources that I've been providing you are available at jamfit.com/support. jamf.com/remote workforce webinar. Visit Jamf Nation discussions to chat with me and others about putting together workflows for supporting remote workers. We're all here to help you succeed with Apple. If you have any questions about what we've just discussed, visit me in the discussions link that I've posted on Jamf Nation, and I'll answer as much as I can there. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe and have a great day.